Hi everyone, glad to see you back on the channel. Today we're looking at one of the most unsettling and transformative developments of the war so far, a moment that many analysts believe marks a turning point not just in tactics, but in the very nature of modern warfare. Ukraine has deployed a robotic system that reportedly wiped out an entire Russian unit with minimal human involvement, and the implications of this are enormous. This isn't science fiction, and it isn't a distant future scenario. It's happening right now on an active battlefield, and it may have just revealed how Ukraine can fundamentally change the balance of this war. To understand why this matters so much, we first need to understand the environment this war has created. The front lines in Ukraine have increasingly become zones of extreme surveillance, constant drone presence, and rapid precision strikes. Traditional mass infantry assaults have proven devastatingly costly, especially for Russian forces relying on outdated doctrines. Every movement is watched, every radio signal risks detection, and every concentration of troops becomes a potential target within minutes. In this environment, the side that can strike fastest, with the least exposure of human soldiers, holds a massive advantage. Ukraine has been adapting faster than many expected. Out of necessity, the country has turned into a living laboratory for modern warfare, combining Western technology, domestic innovation, and battlefield improvisation. Over the past 2 years, Ukraine has refined the use of drones not just as surveillance tools, but as precision weapons, decoys, and even psychological warfare instruments. But what we're seeing now goes a step further. This isn't just a drone dropping a grenade. This is a coordinated robotic system operating with level of autonomy that changes the rules entirely. Reports indicate that a Ukrainian robotic platform operating either remotely or semi-autonomously was deployed against a Russian unit holding a forward position. The system combined ground-based robotics with aerial drones, sensor fusion, and real-time battlefield data. The Russian unit reportedly never fully understood what was happening. There was no visible Ukrainian infantry assault. There were no warning shots. Within a short period, the unit was neutralized, their positions destroyed, and their ability to respond completely overwhelmed. What makes this so significant is not just the destruction itself, but how it was achieved. Ukrainian operators were able to keep their own soldiers at a safe distance, while the robotic system did the most dangerous work. The robot advanced into contested territory, identified targets, coordinated with drones overhead, and delivered precise strikes. Russian troops, trained to respond to human-led attacks, found themselves facing an enemy that didn't behave like a traditional force. There was no hesitation, no fear, and no need for retreat or cover in the way a human unit would require. This kind of robotic warfare attacks more than just physical positions. It strikes at morale. Russian soldiers already operate under immense stress, facing constant drone threats and limited rest. The knowledge that machines can now advance, identify, and destroy them without exposing Ukrainian soldiers adds a new psychological dimension. You can hide from artillery. You can retreat from infantry. But how do you negotiate or intimidate a robot that feels nothing and never gets tired? From Ukraine's perspective, this approach solves several critical problems at once. First, it reduces casualties. Ukraine has always been more sensitive to losses, both because of population size and political realities. Every soldier saved is a strategic victory. Second, it allows Ukraine to apply pressure continuously. Robots don't need rotation cycles in the same way human units do. They can operate in conditions that would be unbearable for soldiers, including under heavy fire or in contaminated environments. Third, it forces Russia to respond with countermeasures that it may not be ready or able to deploy at scale. Russian doctrine has historically emphasized mass, firepower, and attrition. That doctrine struggles against systems that don't rely on mass troops. Shooting artillery at dispersed robotic platforms is inefficient and expensive. Electronic warfare can disrupt some systems, but Ukraine has become increasingly adept at hardening its technology, using multiple communication channels, and rapidly adapting when interference is detected. Every time Russia develops a counter, Ukraine tests a workaround in real combat conditions. This robotic engagement also highlights the growing importance of integration. The robot wasn't acting alone. It was part of a network that included reconnaissance drones, command-in, control software, and human operators making strategic decisions at a higher level. This kind of integration allows for rapid targeting cycles. A drone spots a position. Data is transmitted instantly. The robotic system moves or fires. Damage assessment follows in real time. The entire process can take minutes or even seconds compared to traditional operations that might take hours. Another crucial aspect is cost. While advanced robotics sound expensive, they can be far cheaper than losing trained soldiers or major armored vehicles. A single modern tank costs millions of dollars and requires a trained crew. A robotic platform, especially one built using commercially available components and modular designs, can be produced at a fraction of that cost. Even if it's destroyed, the strategic loss is far smaller. This cost-effectiveness is especially important for Ukraine, which must maximize the impact of every dollar of aid and domestic production. There's also a strategic messaging element here. By demonstrating the successful use of robotic systems, Ukraine sends a signal to its allies. It shows innovation, competence, and the ability to integrate advanced technology effectively. This strengthens arguments for continued and expanded support. Allies are more willing to invest in a partner that shows it can use resources efficiently and creatively. At the same time, it sends a warning to Russia that the technological gap is widening, not closing. For Russia, this development presents serious challenges. Training soldiers to fight robots requires a completely different approach. It demands better situational awareness, improved electronic warfare capabilities, and rapid adaptation at the unit level. But Russia's military structure is notoriously rigid. Orders flow from the top down, and initiative at lower levels is often discouraged. In a fast-moving, technology-driven battlefield, this rigidity becomes a liability. By the time a new countermeasure is approved and deployed, Ukraine may already have moved on to the next iteration. The use of robotic systems also reduces one of Russia's traditional advantages: manpower. Russia has relied heavily on the ability to mobilize large numbers of troops, often with minimal training. Against robots, sheer numbers matter less. A machine doesn't get overwhelmed by fear or fatigue when facing a larger force. In fact, large concentrations of troops become easier targets for automated systems optimized for detection and precision strike. This shift has implications beyond a single engagement. If Ukraine can scale this approach, deploying robotic systems across multiple sectors, it could fundamentally change the nature of the front lines. Instead of static trenches filled with soldiers, we could see zones dominated by sensors, drones, and autonomous or semi-autonomous platforms. Human soldiers would operate further back, focusing on command, logistics, and specialized tasks, while machines handle the most dangerous frontline roles. Such a transformation would also complicate any Russian attempt at a major offensive. Large-scale assaults depend on surprise, momentum, and the ability to exploit breakthroughs. Robotic systems, constantly monitoring and responding, reduce the chances of surprise. They can slow advances, disrupt formations, and buy time for Ukrainian forces to respond with precision strikes. Even a limited robotic presence could dramatically increase the cost of any offensive operation. There are ethical and strategic questions, of course. The increasing autonomy of weapons raises concerns about control, accountability, and escalation. Ukraine has been careful to emphasize that humans remain in the decision-making loop, especially when lethal force is involved. However, the line between human control and machine autonomy is becoming thinner. In the chaos of battle, speed often determines survival, and faster systems inevitably rely more on automated processes. Still, from Ukraine's point of view, the moral calculus is shaped by survival. Facing a larger, aggressive neighbor, Ukraine has little choice but to innovate. Every technological edge helps offset disadvantages in numbers and resources. The successful use of a robotic system to eliminate an enemy unit reinforces the idea that Ukraine doesn't need to match Russia tank for tank or soldier for soldier. It needs to outthink, outmaneuver, and out-innovate. International observers are watching closely. Militaries around the world are studying this conflict as a preview of future wars. What Ukraine demonstrates today could shape doctrines for decades. The lesson is clear. Adaptability, integration, and technological agility matter more than sheer size. Countries that fail to embrace these lessons risk finding themselves unprepared for the next major conflict. For Russian soldiers on the ground, the immediate impact is grim. The battlefield is becoming increasingly hostile, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Facing an enemy that can strike without exposing its own troops adds to an already heavy psychological burden. Desertions, low morale, and discipline problems have been reported throughout the conflict. The introduction of more robotic systems is unlikely to improve that situation. For Ukraine, this moment represents something more hopeful. It shows that despite immense pressure, constant attacks, and limited resources, innovation is possible. It shows that the country is not just reacting, but shaping the battlefield. Each successful deployment builds confidence, refines tactics, and creates a feedback loop of improvement. War, brutal as it is, accelerates learning, and Ukraine is learning fast. This doesn't mean the war is over. Robotics alone won't magically end the conflict. Russia still has significant resources, and wars are rarely decided by a single technology. But this development suggests a path forward, one that minimizes Ukrainian losses while maximizing pressure on Russian forces. It hints at a future where Ukraine can steadily degrade Russia's ability to fight, making the war increasingly costly and unsustainable for Moscow. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel.